Judges in Georgia decide the fate of thousands of children who are caught in divorce. Now, the tough decisions are often influenced by court-appointed advocates, but critics say some of these advocates are poorly trained and potentially biased.
Not at all, Stephanie.
Wow.
So bear with me. This gets a little complicated. The legal term for these advocates is guardian ad litem. They are attorneys sworn to look out for the best interest of children. Many of them do that, but some parents and child psychologists say some don't.
It's like being raped of your children.
Alex Higdon
The mental anguish for both my children and I has been huge.
and Gracie Ortiz-Terrett have never met, but both say they were railroaded in court by powerful attorneys charged with protecting their children.
No evidence was presented to change custody. There was no reason for them to change custody. There was nothing presented that would even carry any weight to change the custody. As a parent, the only thing you want to do is protect your children. And this legal system now has put me in a place where I have no power. They put the power in the hands of the psychologist, the kid's attorney, the evaluator, and they're essentially trying to take me completely out of my children's lives.
I'm the one who has lost custody of my children.
In an interview earlier this year, Terrett says Raina Nadler and Jeannie Kuttner were far from objective in their investigation. In court documents, her attorney alleges the women improperly communicated with the judge, dictated changes in her custody, and even yelled and shouted at and tried to influence Terrett's witnesses. And there's more.
They refused to meet with me. They refused to obtain any information from me. For a period of 90 days, they continued to work with the opposing party. And guardian ad litem just simply cannot do that.
We tried to talk with the guardians after they didn't reply to 3 requests for an interview.
And I'm Jeff Cherica with CBS Atlanta News. Can you please?
One answered the door, but not our tough questions.
The opposing party recommended a guardian ad litem.
Higdon, a former Atlanta Falcon, tells a similar story.
Don Smith?
He says guardian ad litem Don Smith, seen here in a YouTube video, recommended changing his son's school and his custody before evaluating him. And Higdon says this 2010 email shows Smith lied to get the job. It appears to show Smith claiming she has no connection to or opinion on a group that opposes the autism treatments Higdon's sons were receiving.
Well, we come to find out she was actually on the board of that institution in 2004 and 5. She had a personal agenda that she was going to fulfill, and that personal agenda not only included her agenda of how she believed about autism treatment, but it included also about retaliating against me for giving her pushback.
I don't think there's any agency in the world that should operate without oversight, and especially something as important as family court. It seemed to me, based on actually inappropriate conversations between the judge and the director, that they tended to disbelieve allegations of domestic violence. I remember the judge would call us into these morning staff meetings that actually were not permissible under the law. But she would call us into chambers before we heard any cases that day, and we were having ex parte communication about how the court should handle the case. And I remember a conversation between the judge and the Family Court Services director saying, "Oh, Mrs. So-and-so is back. I can't believe it." And the judge said, "She's so histrionic. I think she's completely exaggerating her domestic violence claims." And the director said, "I agree." And they said, "Yes, we need to make sure that these kids have more time with their father." And unfortunately, that was not an isolated incident. There were conversations that I heard repeatedly during the last year of my employment that led me to believe that domestic violence victims were looked at as whiners, as weak people who needed to learn to get along with their perpetrator for the sake of their children.
Many of them don't know what they're saying. And, you know, and it runs up the bill. There's no accountability. They're inherently biased.
Family therapist and expert witness Dr. Monty Weinstein says he's seen guardians often push to limit one parent's custodial time, which he says isn't healthy. He says guardians are highly paid but poorly trained in child development, biased, and potentially influenced.
The guardian ad litems would go with the law firms that give them, in many cases, the most business. So if the law firm is advocating, let's take this mother or father out of the picture, unfortunately, many times they'll find a rationale to talk to the judge.
Since there's no agency that oversees or licenses guardians, it's hard to know how big the problem is. The State Bar Association tells me it doesn't track how many, if any, guardians it has disciplined.
The judge and the mediators would tell parents terrible things would happen to their children if they weren't able to reach an agreement on behalf of their children. The judge and her predecessors held up a picture of a young man and would yell at parents in the courtroom, if you two can't learn to get along, your kids will end up pregnant, on drugs, or like this young man who committed suicide on the day that his parents went to court and failed.
If I were the devil, I would attack the foundation of American society, the family unit. And I keep thinking I'm through with this series, and the Lord keeps showing me more and more things, and I keep feeling that needs to be preached. So I was planning on this being the last, but next week we'll conclude, I think.
I was so distraught at what I was being asked to do because I felt like I was in a position where I had to either protect my job and myself and my family and our income, or to protect the families I was working with. And it's put me through hell. I went out on stress leave. I went through a full arbitration process where the arbitrator found in my favor, but not before they had fired me from my job. And it's outrageous to me that nobody is providing oversight of the court. Aside from the court, there is a conflict of interest there.
If I were the devil, the first thing I would do in attacking the family is I would convince people that marriage is just not important. My first deception would be to convince people that it's just a whole legal entanglement that's not necessary. It causes a lot of headaches. And so I would encourage more and more people to simply live together and forego the legalities, the formalities, and the commitment of marriage altogether.
Do you have any opinion as to whether or not there should be more oversight of guardians ad litem?
I think we have the appropriate oversight.
The state's child advocate, Tanya Boga, says she thinks guardians are largely honest and ethical and believes the court system weeds out the bad ones.
The judge can remove this guardian ad litem if evidence is brought before the court to share that this person is not engaging in their duties properly.
But Higdon and Terrett say the judge shrugged off their concerns, putting their kids at risk.
The children are not getting treatment for the underlying medical challenges.
And he just says he hates his life. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard that from both children because they don't get to see me.
Now, I've spoken to one man who says the court ordered him to pay the guardian $60,000. There is no proof that any of the guardians in this story were influenced by money. The point is, there just isn't an agency that can determine when it does happen. Dawn Smith didn't reply to any of my 4 requests for an interview.
Jeff, do these parents have any recourse at all?
Not really. Once the judge rules, it's really hard to change anything. Now, Alex Higdon is filing a federal lawsuit against both the judge and the guardian. And in Terrett's case, which is very rare, the original judge stepped down, a new judge took over and kicked both over.
The incidence of fatherless homes is reaching epidemic proportions. A third of American children, statistics say, live in homes without their biological father. In the past 50 years, the percentage of children who live with 2 married parents has dropped 22 points. During that same time, the number of babies born to unwed mothers jumped from 5% to 36% of births today. The growing trend of absent fathers has grave implications for our society, researchers say today. Now, I'm not trying to beat up on single parents. Believe me, I want you to hang on and hear what I'm going to say in just a moment. But let me describe the urgency of this situation today. Researchers give us an outlook on the impact that fatherlessness is having on our society. 90% of homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes. 85% of the children with behavioral disorders come from fatherless homes. 71% of high school dropouts come from homes where the father's not present. 85% of the youth in our prisons are in homes where the father's not present. 75% of adolescents in chemical abuse centers come from homes where the father